In this video, I'm going to share with you two important facts about sensory needs and how they impact on your students' ability to regulate their emotions. And the first is this: if your student has difficulties processing a given sense, it's forcing their brain to do a lot of extra work. And what do I mean by that? So let's say your body is undersensitive to the vestibular sense. That's the sense of balance. That means it's going to constantly crave it all day, like an itch that is desperate to be scratched. So you've got a child in class sitting on their chair and they're not getting the sensory feedback they need. And their brain is working all the time in the background trying to manage that craving. Well, that's hard work. It's a form of regulation. As teachers, we often focus on emotional regulation, but sensory regulation is another form of regulation too. And as the day goes on, their brain gets tired and it ceases to be able to manage that need. So the child swings back on their chair, leans right back, desperate to get the sensory input they're craving, and can no longer regulate. And we, as the adults, tell them off for doing it, preventing them from getting the sensory feedback they need, making the situation even worse. Now, there's an important consequence here, and I'll explain that in one moment. First, I just want to let you know we've got a whole training on this subject within our Strategy Hub and Behaviour 360 programs, which explain in detail the effect that sensory feedback has on pupil regulation and strategy after strategy after strategy for supporting them in school, including on how to use planned sensory circuits to meet those needs in a proactive way. Oh, and by the way, the Strategy Hub is only open to new members at certain times of the year. And as I record this, it isn't. But I'll put a link in the comments in case you're watching this in the future when it is open. So what is the consequence of this work the brain is doing in the background when it's not getting the sensory feedback it needs and it's working away to regulate that need? Well, as I touched on, there's more than one kind of regulation. And if the brain is focused on trying to balance that sensory craving or sensory overload in the opposite direction, then it's draining the resources, the calories it needs for those other categories of regulation. So if we want kids to regulate their focus and attention on the page, that's going to be harder to do if the brain's resources are being used on sensory regulation. Or if we want them to regulate their emotions, that will be harder because the brain's resources, its regulation budget, has been spent elsewhere. The tank is empty. So if you work with kids that have sensory needs or an autism diagnosis or an SPD diagnosis, using sensory aids and strategies isn't a nice to have, it's an essential if you want them focused, calm, and attending to their work in class and achieving their potential. Don't pay lip service to this. Get the right strategies in place systematically. Teach them how to do the strategies and why you're asking them to do them. Execute this stuff well, because if you don't, you're undermining their ability to focus, stay emotionally regulated, and succeed in class. My name's Simon Corrigan from Beacon School Support. I hope you found that video useful. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to share with your colleagues.